Tonight, we're stepping right into the heart of the Vietnam War, through the eyes of a soldier. This is a story from a deeply personal memoir, from a man named Hoang Canh, who was part of the elite D406 Sapper Battalion. He takes us right into the 1968 Tet Offensive, a battle they all believed would be the final decisive blow to end the war.
These were the words spoken to the soldiers of the D406 as they were sent into battle. And you have to understand, this wasn't just a mission briefing. It was a statement of absolute finality. A farewell to the mountains. That meant this was it. No coming back until it was over. This was the one fight that was going to decide everything.
So, in the days leading up to the offensive, you can just imagine the atmosphere. There was this almost electric sense of certainty running through the ranks. These soldiers, they genuinely believed this was it, the final battle, the one that would finally bring peace and reunite their country.
And this little detail, it just says so much, doesn't it? They weren't just getting ready for a fight. They were dressing for the very first day of peace. For these men on the ground, this felt like the beginning of a whole new life, a return to the families and the futures they'd put on hold. This hope was so intense that it even started tapping into old prophecies. Suddenly, this ancient verse was on every soldier's lips. See, the lunar calendar for 1968 just so happened to have a leap month, which made it a 13-month year. For them, this wasn't some random coincidence. No, it felt like a sign from destiny itself, proof that their victory was already written in the stars. And with that powerful belief came dreams. You have to picture these young soldiers, most of them barely in their 20s, whispering to each other about what they'd do after the war. They talked about going back to school, about jobs, about finding someone to marry. They were planning a future they were absolutely sure was just a few days away. And right in the middle of all this hope, there's this really poignant moment. A soldier named Dio. He was so swept up in the energy of it all, he desperately wanted a key role in this final battle. Our narrator, who was the #1 gunner, he agreed. And that very same afternoon, Dio, a guy who almost never wrote home, asked for a piece of paper and a pen to write one last letter to his family. But that optimistic feeling back at the base camp, well, it wasn't going to last. It vanished pretty quickly, replaced by the grim reality of their march to the combat zone in Quang Ngai. This was a journey straight into the danger zone, and it was fraught with peril. So the plan hits a snag almost right away. As you can see here, what was supposed to be a fast infiltration turned into a multi-day nightmare. An unexpected delay forced the entire battalion, we're talking hundreds of men, to hide out for a full day and night in this terribly exposed position, just waiting. They were sitting ducks. And this right here, this really paints a picture of just how insane their situation was. Look at this. They're crammed into these low hills with hardly any cover, and they are less than 2 kilometers away from 2 huge U.S. firebases, both packed with heavy artillery. A single mistake, one stray cough, one flash of movement spotted from the air, and the entire unit would have been wiped off the map. And as if things weren't tense enough, our narrator was battling a nasty fever and a violent hacking cough. He spent that entire long day desperately biting down on a scarf his mother had given him, clenching every muscle in his body to keep the coughs from exploding out of him, because he knew that one sound could get them all killed. Okay, so after surviving that absolutely harrowing wait, the unit finally makes it to their attack position. They're in a sugarcane field right on the banks of the Tra Cuc River. The clock is ticking toward midnight. The long wait is finally over. In the first moments of the Lunar New Year, there were no celebratory fireworks. Not this year. Instead, the signal to attack absolutely shattered the night. The Tet Offensive had just begun. The narrator uses this incredible line to describe what he saw. The battlefield just instantly erupted into this blinding storm of light and a deafening roar as both sides unleashed an absolutely furious torrent of firepower on each other. It was just this terrifying symphony of destruction. The air was filled with the sounds of all these different weapons firing at once, a totally chaotic, overwhelming clash of rockets, rifles, and grenade explosions. And then, everything changed. A fatal surprise. An enemy machine gun nest that they had no idea was there suddenly opens up on their flank, and that sugarcane field, which they thought was decent cover, offered basically no protection as it was systematically ripped to shreds by tracer fire. In that storm of fire and chaos, the massive battle suddenly became incredibly personal. It wasn't about some grand offensive anymore. It was about a desperate, second-by-second fight just to stay alive.
He says his first thought was, oh, it's just mud. But as he instinctively brought his hand up to his face to check, the unmistakable, metallic smell of fresh blood hit him.
And in that one horrifying instant, he gets it. The devastating realization hits him. His comrade, Dio, the friend who had been so eager for this fight, so sure of victory, he had absorbed the entire machine gun burst, from his stomach all the way to his head. He died instantly, without ever making a sound.
The whole thing just collapsed with brutal speed. In the span of just a few seconds, his friend was dead, he was wounded in the leg, their weapon was smashed and useless, and they were out of ammo. For their small crew, the great offensive was over. And with the order to retreat came an agonizing, impossible choice. They had to leave their fallen friend behind. The living had to keep moving, and the dead had to be left right there on the battlefield. But the fight for survival was far from over. Just getting away from the battle was its own harrowing journey, a desperate retreat through enemy territory that really came down to sheer luck and the kindness of strangers.
And this really shows you the brutal math of war, doesn't it? The wounded, like our narrator, were quickly found by a network of local civilians who fed them and guided them to safety. But for the fallen, men like Du, their fate was left in the hands of a cleanup crew who would hopefully, maybe, find them later. Even when they were getting away, the danger was constant. The narrator remembers hiding with dozens of other unarmed, wounded soldiers as an enemy patrol swept the area just a couple of fields away. They were completely helpless, and they were only saved by pure chance when a helicopter arrived to pull the patrol out before they reached the village.
So that great offensive, the one they believed was going to end the war, had ended for them in tragedy and retreat. They survived the night, yes, but the physical wounds and the emotional scars would last a lifetime, leaving them with one haunting, unanswerable question. And this is the profound takeaway from his story. It's a raw, honest testament to the random, brutal nature of conflict, where all that hope and conviction can be just shattered in a single instant. It's a somber truth and a haunting tribute to the friend he was forced to leave behind in a sugarcane field in Quang Ngai.